Why is it important to switch your grips when you're doing your chin-ups? So let's say you're unable, or you're in the process of building up reps for your chin-ups. Let's say you followed our chin-up progression and now you can do a few reps. At that point, you're better off sticking to a medium neutral grip as you're building up strength, because this would be your easiest and more natural grip for your pull-up. But once you reach a certain level, it becomes very important to switch the grips around, because you have to understand that the upper back is a quite complex muscle with a bunch of different little muscles and different points of origins and insertions and all. So if you have a broader spectrum of grips that you're using in your training, in the long run, so it's after a year of training, you're going to have a much better developed upper back than someone who's always doing the exact same chin-up. Now you have to keep in mind that with grip differences, you have to consider the hand position. So you could be neutral, you could be pronated, you could be supinated, and obviously this also means semi-supinated, semi-pronated. But also you have the grip width. So like the hand position, it will affect the upper back to a lesser degree, but it will affect a lot more which muscles are involved with your arms, like the bicep muscles. And then the grip width, this will affect the position of the humerus compared to your torso, which will greatly affect which muscles are predominantly used in your upper back when doing these variations. So the more variations you do, the more overall gains you'll have, and the less likely you will stall on your progress over time. So how to further explain the example of the doublé tricep in the book 66 Strategies of Program Design to improve the bench. So in the context of the description in the book, the dip was an exercise used as a tool to improve the bottom position of the bench press. So the doublé tricep in the book was actually a doublé tricep on dumbbell press. So it was a A1 flat dumbbell press for 8 reps. Then you take 10 seconds rest. So like this, it should be set up in a tricep fashion. So you take 10 seconds rest. Then the A2 would be a dip, so a chest dip, where you go for 6 reps, take 10 seconds, and then finally A3, you're going back to flat dumbbell press. And now you're going for 6 reps with the same weight you did with your A1. So in actuality, this was a doublé tricep on dumbbell press, not on chest dip. Now, if you were to use the dip as a doublé exercise, then it would be the opposite. You could do like dip, A1 for 8 reps, 10 seconds. Then you could do something like flat dumbbell press or even decline dumbbell press for 6 reps, wait 10 seconds. Then A3, you're coming back to dip for 6 reps, with obviously trying to reach the same weight you did with your A1. So this would be the structure of the doublé tricep. But just keep in mind in the book again, I was just talking about the dip being a key ingredient to the bench press, but the setup of the tricep was for dumbbell press. Do you need to step on a wedge on a heel elevated squat if you're already wearing Olympic lifting shoes? I mean, you don't have to, but technically if you're using the term heels elevated to describe the exercise, even if you're wearing your Olympic lifting shoes, you should still use a wedge, because that's what the exercise demands. There's nothing wrong with doing both. You're just creating a slightly higher wedge for yourself, which is not a bad thing for people who have more issue getting good position and good depth on the squat. Personally, I'm a big fan of Olympic lifting shoes. I love, the slight elevation it provides. That's great, but I also like the sturdiness of the shoe. And like you often see clients, especially younger athletes, they come and train with their Air Maxes and all that stuff, and the problem there is the sole is so soft, it's so cushiony, that there's a lot of force being dispersed through the ground when they have the barbell on their back. So at least the Olympic lifting shoe is a much sturdier surface with less dissipation of these forces. So yeah, like to me, it's not a problem. Like if it says heel elevated squat and you have Olympic lifting shoes, go ahead, just use the wedge to elevate it. Now, like at Kilo, we like to use 10-degree angle wedges from Atlantis. That to me is a good versatile height for a lot of people. And even if you had your Olympic lifting shoes to this angle, it's not very detrimental. How do I like to train the anaerobic system for hockey players? I mean, it depends. To me, it depends if you're in the off season or if you're in the pre-competitive phase. So if you, because typically, personally, with hockey players, I start training the energy systems during the specific preparation phase. So towards the end part of the off season. And at this point, because I know that by the time the NHL guys go to training camp in mid-September, they're going to do a lot of on ice energy system work at that point. Because in the pre-competitive phase, right before the season starts in October, it's really important that the energy system work that you do is very, very specific to the task at hand. So in hockey, they're going to be skating with their equipment, with the hockey stick. So they need at that point in time to do energy system on the ice, wearing their equipment, holding a hockey stick, so that the efforts that they build improving their energy system truly transfers to the sport. Now, if you go all the way back to the start of the SPP, which might be like early, mid-July, at that point in time, I don't really need to be that specific. And they've been skating like the whole year. If they went all the way up to the Stanley Cup, it means they've been playing until mid-June. So they've been skating a lot. So I'm not going to have them do energy system on skates again during the off season. They might do a few rounds here and there just to maintain groove, but it won't be necessarily energy system work. I don't like running with hockey players. I explained this in another episode, but I just find they don't have they're not used to the forces and the striking rate of sprinting, being hockey players. So the risk reward isn't very good for energy injury prevention. Then the bike, I don't really like it either, because the hockey players are always bent forward. They're always like shortening their hip flexors all the time. So I don't want to put them on an exercise bike and recreating the exact same scenario. So to me, I love using modified strongman type sessions as energy system training. So even if I'm doing anaerobic alactic power or capacity, I'll use modified strongman implements, sleds, the yoke. I love the yoke for hockey, farmer's walk and stuff like that. Now, obviously the energy system gains won't be very specific, but it's okay because I'm still in the off season. So I'm still even though I'm in the SPP phase, I'm still looking at creating a broad spectrum improvement in energy system. And then they're going to be able to carry this onto the ice during the pre-competitive phase. So the advantage of using the modified strongman with the anaerobic alactic system is it allows me to transfer the gains, the strain gains I made in the weight room, into more functional actions that it can carry on to the ice later on while they're playing the game. If I feel neurotyping is needed to write programs, I mean, I no, because I've never used it. So my entire career, that's never something I've used. That being said, I don't know much about it, but I can say that speaking to other coaches being used it, there's definitely seems to be a lot of upsides about it. If you want to further your knowledge on neurotyping, I would highly recommend you go to Christian Thibodeau's course. I've worked with Christians like years ago back in St. Louis. He's probably one of the smartest guys in the industries I've met. So if you can learn neurotyping from Christian, I'm convinced that it's going to be able to help you guys out in writing your programs. Which training do I suggest for fat loss? This is a wide open question, but an interesting question. So to me, let's say you're a general population, but by general population I mean like you're, like 28-year-old accountant that used to play sports and train in high school and college, but now he's been inactive for a while and he wants to get back to training and on, and he wants to get back in shape. That kind of gen pop, like no injury or anything like that. I love to use like classical fat loss training approaches, like the ones I described in the fat loss course, where it's very metabolic dependent type training, like the GBCs and variable muscle action or ascending velocity body comp training, like stuff like that, highly metabolic. You hit it hard, full body workouts, 3-4 times a week if you can, with a solid nutritional background. And I'm talking about the guy who's like 24% body fat type of deal and wants to get down to 10 or 12%. Now, on the flip side, if you're a more avid trainee, you've been training your ass off for years, you're at an advanced level, you have a solid base of muscle mass and strength. Now and let's say you're 10 or 12% body fat and you want to get down to 6, for example, then I'm a firm believer that at that point in time, you still need to train for strength. Like higher weights, maintaining your strength, maintaining your size, do a upper-lower split 4 times a week. You can add in some conditioning, but then the thing is, nutrition becomes the main driver of your fat loss. Okay, so this is how I kind of see it. So it really depends on where you fit on that continuum in terms of expertise or level of training. What's the best split for Gen Pop clients who want fat loss that can only train 3 times a week? Okay, so if your Gen Pop client is not a pure beginner, like he has some training background, then I believe that the metabolic type workouts like GBCs and stuff like that, full body workouts 3 times a week will be your biggest bang for your buck here. But if it's a completely new client that's never really touched weight, I don't think these are the greatest, simply because the client at this time doesn't have the coordination and the ability to recruit enough motor units to make the training very effective. And you'll see it sometimes, like a lot of these people, you start training them through a GBC that if you were to do it, you'd be like throwing up on set number 3. And then you look at them, they do the entire workout, barely sweat, or barely out of breath. And you're questioning, why is this happening? Well, that's why. There's just not recruiting enough motor units. So although they're working at their RM is so low that the stress on the body is not enough to create any type of response. So if you have these clients, then I think that 3 times a week, you could still do full body, but much shorter, like something like a 30-minute, 35-minute straight session where you focus on the big compound movements, somewhere like 6 to 8 reps, and you're reinforcing proper technique, proper tempo, teaching them the importance of the rest period for central nervous system recovery. And then the last 20-25 minutes of the workout, you put them through a modified strongman conditioning workout where now they're going to go all out, they're going to sweat and everything. And the thing now is like they leave the gym with the perception that they've done something in terms of fat loss. But why are these modified strongman conditioning more effective than the GBCs for that with them? Is because technically speaking, these movements are so much easier. They're mostly concentric base, meaning that they can do a lot more concentric reps per unit of time. So they're going to create more lactate than they would doing a GBC, simply because the GBC, their central nervous system is not there yet, but those modified strongmen is a non-issue. So you can really kind of quote unquote kill them on that last 20 minutes, but you still did quality works in the first half of the session trying to build their strength levels on these primary movements so that after 6 months or so, you move them to a GBC, and now there's actually something happening with these workouts.